Hi, David here, and I want to do a Fusion 360 tutorial looking at this organic style bridge. Now, this is using this plugin, this Fusion 360 plugin called the Voronoi sketch generator, and it makes these cells which create these kind of organic structures. And these are seen in the spots of some animals and the patterns on fishes and other places in nature. It's basically as random points on the area are optimized with the lines going to the edge as quick as possible, it creates these different cells. Now, I want to kind of ease our way into this and show other kind of patterns that could be made with bridges, and then eventually show how we can use this plugin for this kind of organic style pattern. So I'm going to go to a new project. So just to start fresh, and looks like there was a sketch open there, but now to start, we would create a sketch. So this is kind of this two-dimensional model, which we're now on the right here, you can see there's these different axes. Now I'm going to click the front. So I'm looking at this kind of face on. Now I'm going to start off with using the arc function. Now I want the constraint of this kind of mini bridge, which eventually will be 3D printed, to be 6 inches. So I'm going to start around here, and I select the beginning point and the end point, 6 inches, and now I'm going to have this curve to this axis. Now I'm doing it in this orientation because the Voronoi plugin likes it when the left hand side is on the y-axis and the right hand side is on the top. And so that origin is in the corner here. Actually, no, so following Fusion, this would be the red would be the x-axis, so the x-axis on the top, and then the z-axis would be up and down, have that on the edge of it. It'll just make it later on easier because the Voronoi sketch will fit into there. But it won't matter for the other examples we're doing. Okay, now I'm going to take a line, connect it here. I'm kind of tracing this basic outline. Now I'm going to go, what this looks right about 0.7 inches. Now go over here, 0.5 inches. Now I'm going to mirror that on the other side. So go down 0.7 inches, then the left 0.5. Now finally, I'm going to create another arc, connecting the start point, the end point, and then determining how high we want. So let's say, you can use whatever you like. Let's say that looks nice for me. Okay. Now, I'll just state right now, we've created a really good foundation for a really great bridge. What we can do with this model is to extrude it out. And so this is this extrude function, and this pulls out that kind of 2D sketch into 3D. So, imagine I can pull this out. Let's say it's 1/2 inch, and now I have this little bridge. And that's a great design. This arc pattern is really useful. It's like a common pattern kind of seen in like strings as they hang. There's a special kind of arc that they follow, but arcs are, very common and commonly seen in nature, and they kind of balance those. Okay, so now I'm just going to do something which will be useful in a little bit, and you'll see why, but it's to create an offset. I'll show you, and it'll become apparent in a little bit. So what I will do is hide this body, but now make this sketch, which I created earlier, sketch 2. I don't think there was no sketch 1 we needed, so I'm just going to delete this sketch 2. Now I want to show this interesting function here called offset. So what I need to do first is edit the sketch. So I'm going to add some more, detail to this sketch because we want to do more things. We basically want to create this border around it. So I'm going to create this offset. And now when I click the path, it will it will create a path around the straight lines and the curves. Now, by dragging this arrow, it could be bigger than it, but the constraint is 6 inches, so I'm gonna want it to make it a little smaller. So I make it smaller like this. And I'm just gonna do it, kind of by eye, what I think is nice, and push OK. So now we basically have these two areas. Finish the sketch. Now, okay, I'm gonna unhide the body. So the body's still here. So this sketch was kind of on the back, and you'll see why that's important. Now I just want to show something interesting. Let's imagine before we create, that organic Voronoi pattern, what if we just want to create some basic squares or something? I just want to show how to do that first before going to some more. So one way to do that, I'm just going to hide the sketch so you don't see that basic sketch that we use to create the model. I am going to create a new sketch. Now, you can use the front and you can use these planes here. You can also use the planes and curves on the objects. So I'm going to use this front plane here because I want that to be where the sketch is. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to place a polygon. Now I want to do a square. So imagine if I place a little square here. Now I'm going to change this edge number to 4 so that it's a square. Maybe I'll do it kind of like a diamond. That looks nice. Something like this. This is what I was thinking. Now, what you could do, and I'll just show it real quick, is that with that sketch, I could go one by one and draw these different squares. And then I can do something extrude it where it doesn't, this would be joining. You see this operation is join, but when I push it through the object, operation here automatically goes to cut. Now it could be set to join where it would basically join that object and it would join, but when you set it to cut, it basically cuts through. I'm kind of getting this kind of more, or these holes, but that's kind of a slow way to do it because you're doing it one by one. So I want to show another way. I'm going to push Control D to go backwards. I'm back into that sketch of that square. Now what I'm going to do is hold it. I already drag over it, so I'm highlighting it. And now I'm going to create a rectangular pattern. It's a great way to create these, really interesting patterns. And what this allows to do, that when you have this, you can pull it out to the side, for example. And now I'm creating this kind of beautiful pattern. Now, I want to increase the quantity. Instead of 3, let's imagine that we have, it can fit a lot in here. Like, probably like 20. Now, I also kind of want some going up and down. So you can also drag this one up and down. And now, creating lots of these diamonds. Drag it up. Okay, that looks good. Now if I push OK, now I've created all these diamonds. Now I'm going to show you how you can kind of cut it out, a bridge, with these kind of shape before showing the Voronoi. Because it's really useful to know how this pattern functions. So what I can do here, I can highlight all those squares. Now if I go, first, which is really important, is actually to finish the sketch. So I just want to finish the sketch. That sketch is now complete with all these diamonds. Now I'm going to go back to extrude. I've selected all these diamonds. Now I want to drag it through. I did that, I showed earlier with doing one square, but now it's doing all these squares. I'm going to drag it through and I'm going to cut out everything here. So now we have this bridge that's kind of all cut out. But we did want that border around the edge because it makes it strong kind of around the edge. So one way to do that, which we set it up for before, remember on our initial sketch on the back, and what I'm going to do right now is just hide the body so it becomes really clear. There's the inside area and then there's this border that we're talking about. So I'm just going to select the border. Now, put the body back on. Now, when I do extrude, what I'm going to do is have it overlap. And it would set it to cut because it would usually think, oh, do you want to cut it out? But actually, what I want to do is to join it. I want to make this border around the edge. Now, if I make that border around the edge, I push OK, you see now I'm just going to hide this sketch so we just see the object. Now, I'm kind of getting to this object that I'm trying to create with the cells, but I'm just showing you another way to go about it, which is to create a pattern, to really draw the pattern inside of. So now this creates this bridge with this square, but also having that nice border around the edge so it's not open. Now, there's also another stuff you can do, another way to approach this, which is to enter an SVG, and this is kind of a pre-made file. So now I'm just going back to that sketch with the square, and let's just erase the square for now, so we're not doing that. Now what we can do is insert an SVG, and I've created them, and I'll post them. I'll post a link below so you can see, but you can insert SVG, and I've created a whole bunch of these. And what's great about this is that you can easily kind of import a pattern. So these are some examples that I've created, and I know that I want to try a kind of fractal square pattern. So instead of a normal square, what about kind of a fractal square? And I created one here. So I'm going to import it. Now, when you import the SVGs, they usually sort to the origin, but you can hold this box right here and move it. Let's say, I want to move it to a certain area and cut it out. Now, this little arrow right here, when you drag it, you can expand it, and that will grow pattern or shrink the pattern. So one way to do it is to say, let's grow it. I want to cut out a kind of fractal square here, I can set it. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to say okay. So this is essentially, instead of making the pattern in Fusion, I made it outside of Fusion. But this is a kind of a quick way to get there. Now, what I'm going to do is, finish sketch. That's important. Now, basically what I want to do is I want to cut out the inside of all these squares to cut it out. Now, it's kind of annoying to click them one by one, so I want to show one quick way to do it. One quick way to do it is to just highlight the whole area. So this means that all the squares are highlighted and this area. Now, if you push Shift while you click area, it will add it to the selection, or if it's already added, it will remove it. So when I click Shift and then highlight over this area, it will remove it. So now all I have done is selected this square. Let me just okay, yeah, so now I've just selected. Now if I extrude, okay, so it looks like the area was selected. So I'm just going to cancel right now, and I'm just going to do, if this happens, one approach is to just hide the body to make it a little easier sometimes. Because what was happening was I was kind of selecting the body too. So now I'm going to highlight all the squares that I want to cut out the shape. And yeah, this area is still highlighted. So, selection can be adding to squares, but then it removes it when it's done. So now I can remove this section. And that's a nice trick, is sometimes hiding the body if it's getting in the way. So now I have everything that I want to cut out of the body highlighted. Now I'm going to enter the body back in, make it visible, and then extrude it. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, now I have everything selected that I want to cut out of the object. Now when I pull it back, you see now it's taking all those little squares, those fractal squares, and it's cutting it out of the bridge. Now the operation is set to cut. It's not join, which would join them all. We don't want that. We want it to cut it. So, okay. Now I've cut out this pattern, but we probably want that border added again, right? So we can do that same trick we did before, and I'll just unhide the body to show exactly is we're highlighting this border. And so now when I bring the object back in, I extrude just as we did before. Now it's set to automatically cut. It's thinking that we're trying to cut this out, but what we're actually trying to do is to join it. Okay, now I'm going to hide the sketch, and so now we can see what we. Now we made a bridge with a fractal pattern. So we started, by drawing the pattern. Now we did this fractal pattern, which is cool. There's a whole bunch of other SVGs you can use to cut things out, or also you can also use it to extrude it, right? To fill it in, not to cut it out. Now, finally, I'll show how to use the Voronoi. So I'm just going to go back to that area that we were before. So instead of entering that SVG, I'm now back here. So now this is a plugin. I'll include the link here and some other videos of how to use it. And there's a lot of videos on how to use it. And once you add it, it will be in the solids tab and it generates this sketch. So I'm in the sketch right now. So I click Voronoi. Now I'm gonna want to click the actual. I'm clicking the face, which is really useful because it will use that profile to create the boundary of this Voronoi cells. I'm gonna say use profile size, and that put the profile size as the width and the height. It would automatically kind of sync them up. And sometimes when you do it, I said in the beginning of the video, I kind of had it so the up and down was on the axis was on the very left of this arc, and the top axis was on the very top. And that just makes it so that origin point is at that upper left-hand side, and it just makes the Voronoi sync up. It's a little finicky. You can move it around, but that's why I set it up like that. Now, if I click the Voronoi editor, now it enters this box. Now you can do a whole bunch of cool things in here. Like, for example, it's automatically generating these cells. I could do less cells. I could do more cells. So I'm just going to do what I think looks. Now you can have more gap between the cells, less gap. Now I'm going to kind of have it something like this. I think this looks pretty good, like this. There's a whole bunch of other functions. I'm going to do relaxation. That helps it kind of relax a little bit. Makes it a little more even. I'm going to make the cell count just a little bit higher. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. Now, when I'm ready, I say publish to Fusion. And what this has done, it's overlaid this sketch on here. Now, this turned out pretty well. Sometimes it can be moved and stuff, and you can watch other videos on how to align that and some tips and tricks. Okay. So now what we basically want to do is cut out all these little circles from that object. So just make this a little easier. Again, I'm going to hide the object. Remember, we did that last time. I'm going to select. Oh yeah. The thing that's easy to forget is to finish the sketch. So I finished the sketch. Okay. Now we have this Voronoi pattern. Now I'm going to highlight everything, and we're going to kind of do that unselect trick again. So I'm going to push shift, then select that inside region. So now just the cells, just what we want to cut out. So you can kind of think about it both ways, either what you want to cut out or what you want to add. But in this case, we already have a body here. So I do want to just cut out these little cells. So I'm going to do extrude. And now I'm going to push this through. Now I've cut out all these little cells from this bridge. Now cut. Now again, as in all the other times that we were doing this, the edges, they're kind of open and we want that nice border. So I'm gonna do that. That's why I created that offset earlier. So I'm gonna go back and I'll just hide the body just so we can see it again. And so here's the offset. So I'm gonna create that border. Now I'm gonna extrude it out. I'm gonna push it. Okay. Says there's an error combining the geometry, but I don't think I think it's actually fine once you set it to 5. Because it's set to cut right now, but once you set it to join, I'm basically just joining the edge right here. Okay, now once I push join, I'm gonna hide this sketch, and now we have this Voronoi organic style bridge. This is kind of an interesting bridge. Maybe it's more efficient. We can test them. We're going to be testing them at our UC Santa Cruz class that I'm teaching. So really excited about that. Okay, so I do just want to follow up with, we got this bridge. Now, what if we did want to 3D print it? I do want to show how we would do that real quick. So to do that, I am going to save this bridge design, because basically I'm just going to export. So you may not see it in the screen, but when I go to File under Fusion, you can select export. Let me see if you see. Okay, I don't think. Okay, I guess, yeah, so now you see this drop down. Now we're going to go to export. Now, this Autodesk Fusion file .f3d, that is usually only works with Fusion. So we want to export in other files that are used. 3M files are used a lot. Object files, STL files are used a lot. I'm just going to use 3MF files. So what I'm going to do is just export this to my desktop. Export. Now what I've done here is I have exported that model. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Bambu Studio. So let me just change the application to Bambu. Okay, just bear with me. Bambu Studio, perfect. Okay. Now I'm just gonna line so you can see everything. Okay. Now we're in Bambu, and this works, with the Bambu carbon printers, the other 3D printers. We're using the Bambu X1 carbons for our class. So now here is the build plate, which your 3D model would be on. Now I want to add that model I just exported. So for here, you can go to add. So if I go to add, I am going to go to the desktop, the bridge design we just added. We'll just guard model. We're just going to go more with the presets. Okay, so now that model that we just took out of Fusion, we've put in here. Now, this is not necessarily the best orientation to print it because it will likely need supports on the bottom. It may work, but this is just a harder way to do it. So another way to do it, if you flipped it and you printed it up with the side on the bottom, it would be a little easier. So to do that, I just want to show you that what you can do here, you can edit this in Bambu, which is often nice to do these kind of final edits sometimes in in your slicer, whatever you're using, if you're doing 3D printing, it makes it a little easier. So basically there's this rotate. And now you see you can rotate on the different axes. So I'm gonna click this red one and go 270 degrees. See, now that basically just flipped it. So now it's perfect. Now, our constraint before that was 6 inches. So I just want to confirm here, look, the size and my size is set to inches in Bambu Studio, and you can change that by going to your settings. You can see this is 6 inches by 1 inch by 5.5 inch, 1.2 inch by 0.5 inch. Okay, so one question could be like, how much filament does this take? Okay, and I'm gonna show. So let's just look at. Okay, this is saying the layer height's 0.2. So this is saying the top shells has 4 layers. The bottom shell is 4 layers. It's a 20% infill with a gyroid pattern. Okay, now let's see what this is. Now what I can do is slice the plate, and that will essentially now slice it. It's interesting. It's registering a floating cantilever, but there may just be some little thing going on. But this shouldn't actually have floating cantilever because we've changed its direction. Let me try the other way. Maybe if I went this way. Okay. Oh, okay. Let's try this. Okay, so I think the angle was like off by like 0.1 angle. So it should have worked at just if I selected the other read. If I selected the inside where it locked it down, it would be fine. Okay. So now this is saying, hey, this is taking 0.76 ounces of materials. You see, and then now this is giving you how it's sliced. Now let's just say that, let's say that, we didn't have 0.7 materials. Let's say we had less. We needed to be like 0.6. Well, what are some ways that you could make it less? Well, one way you can make it less, I'm going back, this is preview, so we're kind of previewing the slicing. Now, another way is that to prepare. I'm going back to the prepare, so I'm going back to the model. I'm gonna say, well, what if we just made it a little less tall? Now the tallness. It won't really change all the other dimensions. It'll just change it a little bit on that one axis. So one way you can do that, while keeping it 6 inches, is if you go to the scale. It's set at uniform scale, but I'm gonna unselect that because uniform would change them all uniformly. So if I unselect it, I can change the dimension on a different axis. Now I'm gonna say, well, instead of printing it all the way on this y-axis, what if it's just 80%? Okay, now let's slice it from here. 0.61 ounces. Okay, well, it's still a little higher than what we want. So I'm gonna go back to prepare. I'm gonna go back to scale. Now, just a little bit less. Now, let's see, slice it. 0.53 ounces. Well, maybe I want a little bit more than that because if I'm aiming for 6. So, just gonna raise it up. Add it. All right. 0.6. Okay. I've gotten perfectly 0.6 ounces. So Yeah, and you can see the time. So this would take an hour and a half. Um, so now, you could print the plate, you can export the G code, and you can get what you need to print. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and see you more next time. All the best. Bye-bye.